Greetings and felicitations.
Hip, hip, hurrah, tally ho.
Hey, Cutie Pie.
Hey, Puddin'.
Today we're going to have on some of our favorite members of the DragonCon Puppetry Track. In fact, they're felt nerdy. Welcome, Chuck.
Hi.
Aka.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Awesome. So tell us, how did you get involved in the DragonCon Puppetry Track?
It was more of, we knew Bo was doing it. And the first couple of years we weren't heavily involved. We were kind of just doing our own small convention thing, because there was a long time where we did not perform at DragonCon. It was like the convention we didn't perform at. It was our hang out and have fun and not worry about puppets convention. But then one year I ran into the Tracks director, Leah, the assistant director, the one who actually does all the stuff. I was like, hey, do you have a slot that you need to be filled? I have a Star Trek puppet show. So we kind of just started out not even really being guests that year. But I volunteered there for 15 years. So we were already going.
Yeah, we've been fans of the DragonCon Puppetry Track for a long time.
Yes.
And we really just go to learn,
Yes.
you know? And then we've been doing our own puppet shows at conventions for 8 years at smaller cons. And then over the last few years, we decided to start performing at DragonCon as well. And I mean, it's just the DragonCon Puppetry Track is just a great resource for people who are interested in puppetry or want to, have some one-on-one time with people who are puppet professionals, but also just a lot of great entertainment, a lot of great artistry that's on display.
Which is not something, at least nerdy wise, that you see a lot of, or maybe I just miss all of the performance stuff at DragonCon, which is entirely possible. I spent most of my time volunteering.
I know that the first time that I got as a fan involved in going to some of the programming at the Puppetry Track, I was amazed at the creativity. Like, give us some background. Yeah. What is involved in the Puppetry Track? There's so much variety to puppetry that it's hard to even segment what is a puppet and what is not, because there's so much variety. So give us in your terms, what can be considered a puppet?
Yeah, it really can be anything. That's the great thing about puppetry is I've seen great puppeteers who could use a bath towel and bring you to tears by animating it and giving it a life and a personality. And then on the other side of that, you've got, at the Puppetry Track, particularly at DragonCon, they do a great job of bringing in people who worked on things that you loved when you were kids. It could be, the people who worked on Critters. It could be people from Sesame Street. I think it was last time we were at DragonCon when they had, a lot of the human performers who were on Sesame Street when we were growing up, which, it really hits you in an emotional place seeing all those people in person, because you watched them when you were so young. But then totally. At the same time, it could just as easily be, like an independent artist from Seattle who you've never heard of, who's just a great performer and doing weird abstract puppetry, something you'd never considered. It's the great thing about what they do is they have to have a great variety of either pop culture, entertainment that you're familiar with, or, just great artistry you've never heard of.
Yeah.
I'd say that for the most of us, our first exposure to puppets was probably Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
I
know our puppetry is very I know our puppetry is very Jim Henson influenced because we grew up in the 80s,
With the Muppets,
right? The Muppets and Sesame Street, and it's really the gold standard for me for puppetry. That was what I was introduced to. This is what a puppet is. So that's something that we love to do and something that we love to carry forward in our own way as well.
But puppets are really not just for kids, right? You can do shows for adults, and of course we love it. Grown-ups love it too.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of great puppetry for adults. Now there's some that's explicitly for adults, and we do some of those. Like I know here in Atlanta they have the Puck and Fuppet show, which is a great adult only, 21 and up. Everyone's drinking alcohol and having a great time, and it really lets the puppeteers especially a lot of people who spend a lot of time performing for kids, get sort of their adult side out as well. But in addition to that, it doesn't have to be raunchy puppetry. There's a lot of very sophisticated storytelling that you can do with puppetry. Really, puppetry is just anything where you're animating something, you're bringing to life something that's not alive.
I remember one year at the Puck and Puppet that someone just had beer bottles and they used them as puppets and did this little cute performance, and it was adorable, and I loved it. So basically anything can be a puppet.
Yeah. And that's, people think that there's a barrier to entry for puppetry. Like I have to learn how to make a puppet or do puppetry before I do it. But really, most of us have been doing puppetry all our lives. I know the first puppetry I would say I ever did would be animating my sister's Cabbage Patch dolls when I was a kid, because they all had their own personalities and I gave them voices and names. And that was the game that we played. And I didn't think of it at the time, but that's puppetry. That's bringing, life to something that's not alive.
Being a ventriloquist, that's being a puppeteer, right? It's the same thing.
It's a very specialized kind of puppeteer. Very, very difficult, especially if you're on stage, not behind a mask or anything.
Yeah, there's a very specific art, because a lot of the puppetry that we do, we're hidden. We get behind the playboard, the puppets are on stage. So I think it takes a lot to be a ventriloquist, because you're putting yourself and your face right out there while you're essentially playing two characters at the same time, and trying to convince the audience or getting them to go along with you that there's two people on the stage and not just the one.
Yeah.
It's interesting because attending different events on the puppetry track at DragonCon, we noticed that there is a massive amount of adults that love all different forms of puppetry. And we just did a review of a TV Guide from the early 70s. And the theme, the feel of some parents at that time was that having children learn through Sesame Street, through puppets, is actually demeaning and it's foolish. And there was almost a crusade against having puppetry teach kids. Now, fast forward 50 years from now, everyone loves puppets, all different types of puppets. So about some of the things that you're seeing in the world of puppetry that has changed over the years, and our viewpoints have changed towards them.
Oh yeah. And when we do a puppet show at a convention, we never know if it's going to be a group of 8-year-olds or if it's going to be a group of 50-year-olds. So we try
somewhere in the middle.
we try to engineer our shows to be able to work for both audiences and try to be, because like I said, we never know who's going to be there, or it could be both. But I think what you're talking about too is a lot of the acceptance that adults have for puppetry now, in a similar way to cartoons. 50 years ago, there would be a lot of pushback against adult cartoons or, use of puppetry. But because they were able to do it so well when we were young, it's something that we grew up accustomed to and have a love for. Whereas someone who was 2 generations before us may not have had that opportunity because they weren't being shown the work of Jim Henson back then when they were kids. If you're growing up in the 1930s, you may not have the childhood nostalgia for a puppet show that those of us who grew up on PBS would have.
That's true. Absolutely. So give us an idea about maybe the history of the puppetry track and how important it is to the con itself.
Oh gosh, I don't even remember when it started. I do remember the very first year. They were in a room at the Marriott on that lower level where people like crowd and there's those fan tables and you can't get around between panels. And they had this one little room, and to see the puppet shows and the puppeteers, because they had to do everything in there. They didn't have any of the Hyatt Regency 5 or anything like that. They did everything in that room. And they had like lines of people wrapped around the walls of the Marriott everywhere, waiting to get in. And then there were people waitlisted basically to get in the room to be able to see the show. So I don't remember what year it was, but I do remember that first year. And then they moved to their current location, which is very convenient. It may seem kind of tucked back out of the way, but I really enjoy that because there's also that space right by the track where a lot of makers bring their, which could be considered droids or puppets. We had the guy who puppeteered BB-8. He came one year. So having those guys like that are always right over there anyway, it's kind of a nice little smushed together.
That's interesting. Yeah, you said like being the line wrapped around the Marriott. That's like everything at DragonCon.
Yeah, but a first year track and a puppetry track and I was so glad to see that come around.
That it was so
when it did.
popular, yeah, that everybody wanted
Yeah.
to see it.
And somewhere like Dragon Con, you have so many different fandoms. You can have an anime fan, you can have a Star Wars fan, and you don't someone doesn't necessarily have to like both, but you can have both people at Dragon Con. But we all grew up with Sesame Street. We all grew up with the Muppets, and something like the Puppetry Track can really encompass any other track, because you can have a Star Wars puppet show. You could have an anime themed puppet show. You can really, anything that you can do, any genre or any fandom that's out there, you can do through puppetry as well. So I think that you have the puppetry has a lot of crossover appeal because of that.
Costuming for puppets.
Yeah.
Well, even different types of puppets too. Like, help us to explore what types of puppetry are expressed on this Dragon Con Puppetry Track.
Oh gosh.
How much time do you have? Because I mean, at Dragon Con, I know that we've seen great hand puppet shows. We've seen great shadow puppet shows. We've seen great marionette shows. I mean, we've seen ventriloquists. I mean, really any kind of puppetry you can imagine. I know that, Bo is big with the Center for Puppetry Arts, and they have a lot of inroads into the puppetry scene. And I mean, you get a lot of just great varied puppetry. Like what we do is, like I said, a lot of Jim Henson style hand and rod puppets, but you can have someone in there who's doing a bunraku show, which is like a tabletop show, which is entirely different than what we're doing. It's the same in that we're both using puppets, but a lot of times that's the only thing that you have in common, is that there's a different type of puppetry, different types of puppeteers. I mean, really, you go from one show to the next and it could be anything.
So the two of you, I know you do lots of different types of shows too. You do a Star Trek show, and you also do like a Doctor Who show. Like where do you get your ideas, and do you do your own writing?
That is all 100% Chuck.
Yeah. The writing really just comes from spending my entire life watching sci-fi shows. So, a lot of things that they'll come up like a joke I'll make during watching a Doctor Who episode, and I'll think, wow, that would be a great puppet show, or you see like Star Trek Discovery, for instance. I thought it was a little ridiculous that the main character in the beginning, that she was Spock's sister. I was like, well, what would it be like if Spock's sister really turned up? And so we'll do a puppet show where Spock's sister shows up to try to enlist him to do this prequel with her, and he's reluctant to do so. So we'll do a lot of sort of satirical things. That's like great. That. Yeah, we have a show called Bad Reboot, which is basically Spock going back to Hollywood and having to go through the process of a reboot, and dealing with the Hollywood expectations of what they want him to be successful again. So it's sort of the character is experiencing what we as the audience experience, and they're living through it. I like to think if the characters were alive, what would they think about having to be in a reboot or a prequel or a sequel or whatever the case may be. So we do a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, we do Star Trek shows, Doctor Who shows,
monster shows. Monster shows.
Monster shows. Yeah, we do Monsterama here in Atlanta. Really just anything that we're nerds for. I don't think anyone can poke fun of at something like a fan can, because it inside and out. And so we poke fun, but we poke fun with love.
Yeah.
We've expressed how there's so much crossover with the Puppetry Track to fandoms. And you mentioned BB-8. Like, a lot of people don't realize they actually hired a puppeteer to do the remote controls for BB-8 because BB-8 was very expressive. So what other you see crossover with the Puppetry Track?
Oh God.
I mean, for those of us who grew up in the 80s, I don't know what
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, but I mean, really, what sci-fi franchise didn't have puppets?
Yeah.
I mean, when we were kids, they didn't have CGI the way they do now. So if you wanted to bring a character to life, it'd be suits, puppets, marionettes. We look at Star Wars, and then you've got suit actors, you've got animatronic characters, you've got stop motion characters. You really anything they could do to bring something to life, they would do it. So a lot of the great franchises that we love had a lot of puppetry in them. I mean, you go back to original Star Trek episodes, and the Tholian is a puppet. Baylock is a puppet. Wow, the puppet Baylock was a puppet. I mean,
yeah.
There's just it was just. I love that the practical special effects. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Dark Crystal.
Yeah, I mean, Dark
Yep.
Crystal is a great example because that's a fantasy film that's brought to life with puppets, and it's something they brought back so successful with the Dark Crystal Netflix series, which I think the most ambitious puppetry TV show
my
that's
gosh,
ever been
yes.
made. I
Mhm.
mean, it was like like Game of Thrones level, but all done with puppets, which is just phenomenal.
And I'm not very familiar with it, but I know there's actually like animation shows that are based in puppetry. Like they'll perform puppets, but then they'll animate it.
Yeah, the Henson Company does a lot of that virtual puppetry now with things like Splash and Bubbles and shows like that, where they have puppeteers who are animating the CGI characters with specialized rigs, so they can turn it out a lot faster, and you have an actual performer performing that character rather than an animator, which is it's a really fascinating new development in well, I say new, but over the last decade or so, it's a way to do puppetry while utilizing the modern special effects.
And we mentioned BB-8, but there's also Yoda.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Yoda's a great
Yes.
example. I mean, the Gremlins. I mean,
Yeah.
E.T. I mean, you don't think of E.T. necessarily as a puppet show, but E.T.'s obviously a puppet.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that captured me about puppetry. I mean, you watch something like Muppets Take Manhattan, and it's so wrenching and emotional at times. And I look at Kermit the Frog, and I don't see a guy's hand with fleece over it. I see Kermit the Frog, a character. You know what I mean? So the fact that it's the magic trick, that they can fool you, they can fool your brain into seeing these, a person's hand covered in fabric and make you feel for it, make you feel like it's a character.
So yeah, I agree. And the Dragon Con Puppetry Track has invited many professional guests that were involved in these productions. What's it like to meet these guests? And has that changed your craft in any way?
Oh, yes. Specifically, I'm going to say her name wrong.
Okay, I don't know who you're talking about. Stacey Gordon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, specifically her. Because so this was before this was probably the second year of the puppetry track. And we had already been performing at other conventions for a while, and we built all of our own puppets, of course. So I had our puppets. They had this panel every year where you come in with your puppets and you talk to the professionals, and they rotate around, and you talk to different people in there that are professional puppet builders and performers about your creations and ways to improve it. And one of the big things we had a problem with is turtleneck. So our puppets have this round body and it's a sleeve up inside of it, so we can swap their costumes out and stuff. But we were having a problem where the puppet would slowly get a longer neck over time.
The body was sliding down.
Yeah, the body was sliding down, basically. And she's like, oh, just put a tube in the bottom of it and then it'll stay on.
Yeah.
So
it's phenomenal to be able to sit down people who do this professionally. I mean, I was explaining a problem we were having with moving around behind the stage to a professional puppeteer from Arizona. And he said, well, why don't you just make your playboard taller and stand up, and then you could walk around. I'm like,
and we did.
You could do that? It's the opportunity to sit down with, puppeteers one-on-one, and not just anybody, but someone who runs a puppet studio, or someone who played Snuffleupagus, you know what I mean? And say, this is my puppet, this is my character, what do you think? And they'll just give you their feedback, it's a phenomenal opportunity.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you have puppets. Do you happen to have any handy?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we generally have puppets handy. You can't
So let's talk
walk around
about
our house without tripping over
You
a puppet.
craft your own puppets?
Yes.
Yep. We build our own puppets. We're initially, and I know he was we designed Spock. He was customized from a free pattern from a website called Project Puppet, where you can just buy free patterns and then you can customize them from there and make your characters. We're to the point now where we design our own patterns. We sculpt them in clay and then pull a pattern. But I mean, this is Spock, and like I said, the bulk of him is a free pattern that we just bought for $20, and then we customized him from there. And the great thing about a puppet is it doesn't have to be lifelike. It's essentially a caricature. You're just capturing the essential elements of a character and then bringing it to life. And I think anyone who goes to a Star Trek convention and see this puppet knows it's Spock.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look like Leonard Nimoy.
Can we hear him talk?
Uh-oh.
No, that's not me.
Trade. Greetings. I am Spock.
That's cool. Yeah.
Why, thank you.
So I do want to show, I have a little finger puppet here,
Oh, great.
Aw.
a little Andorian. And I gave a few of these out at a con one time. So two
Is that-
shows with them, but I
Is
showed,
that a crochet one? Is that crochet?
yes.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yes, that's the great thing about puppetry is that it could be as elaborate as you want, or it could be as simple as you want. You know, you can, you know, the Andorian doesn't have to be anatomically correct. It has to just have the essential elements that you feel make it an Andorian, and people recognize it. You know, it could be something very simple. It could be something very complicated. It's. I don't know how well Grovar is going to work because he's green
No.
and we're on a green screen, but you
Yeah,
can try him.
but that's okay. We'll
Oh,
see
he's
how it
showing
goes.
up.
Hey, he
Looks
showed up.
good.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
So, yeah, this is
So let's
this is
try
our
it again, and I'll
Klingon
do
here.
Grovar.
Yeah.
Grovar is we do a routine called Galactic Public Television, which Grovar the Great is the greatest Klingon warrior. Greetings, welcome. I am Grovar the Great, and he teaches people Klingon and lessons on how to be a warrior. Only he's not terribly great at it himself. he's our crowd warm up at a lot of our shows.
Yes.
He's cute. I can tell he's a TOS Klingon.
He's
Yes.
a TOS Klingon. He's also, you know, obviously inspired by Sesame Street. So my idea, you know, you see a lot of these versions of Sesame Street from around the world where the characters will be, you know, Big Bird will be blue or a bear or something like that because just cultural differences. So when we were designing Grovar, we thought, well, what would Sesame Street be like if it was made on Kronos? You know, if the Klingon Empire was broadcasting their own version of Sesame Street, what would he be like? And so he's sort of our version of that.
And your
We
show,
actually created him originally as Yoda.
Well, I'm sorry, what were you asking?
I'm saying the show that you put on at Dragon Con are Star Trek based. And you're part of a Star Trek podcast, which we highly recommend to all of our listeners as well. You're part of the ESNO network, which is, they're a great group of people, but yours is.
Yeah, we do Earth Station Trek.
Tell us a little bit about Earth Station Trek while you're at it.
Yeah, Earth Station Trek, it really emerged out of the pandemic. You know, we do a lot of live shows. That's sort of our bread and butter, is doing live shows. That's what we love doing at conventions. But then all of a sudden one day everything stopped and we found ourselves just being people and living our lives and going to work and going crazy. So the opportunity came up. The ESO network was looking for a Star Trek podcast. And so, well, why don't we do it? So we got on board with two of our friends, Alan Seiler and Keith Johnson, and we go out weekly. We have a podcast where it's really just a bunch of friends sitting around talking about Star Trek. Our latest episode just came out today, talking about the first season of Picard and looking forward to the second season of Picard. But it's given us an opportunity to really get some creative juices flowing while we've been sort of grounded and not being able to go out and do live shows, doing graphic arts and music and things like that to add to the show. But I mean, really the biggest thing has just been, we've all had a little bit of a difficult year. The world has, but it was nice just to set aside an hour every week for the last 6 months or so and just sit around and just talk about Star Trek with our friends and not have to worry about work and COVID during work and things like that. And really just sit and talk about something that we love. And so, yeah, Earth Station Trek has sort of become our baby, and the show's doing very well. We have a great time doing it. And it's really just fun bringing together a lot of different views about Star Trek. I've been watching Star Trek, obviously, my entire life obsessively. Veronica is the most enthusiastic new Star Trek fan I've ever met. She sleeps in Star Trek pajamas and she's learning Klingon and Duolingo, but she's never seen 90% of the Star Trek episodes. So it's a lot of fun.
Not 90% anymore.
Well, you don't remember 90%. of them.
That's true. I have no memory for TV episodes or anything, so I can rewatch a series and have no memory of it. So it's like watching a new episode.
Yeah, and Veronica brings a very unique perspective to the show. She's the only person I've ever met who chose Cat's Paw as her favorite TOS episode. But that's the fun of it. We have a great time. We talk about Star Trek. So anyone, if you just want to hang out for an hour with friends every week, listen to Earth Station Trek. It's available on any podcast platform you choose, and we have a Facebook group and all that as well. So look us up. We have a good time.
Yeah, I'll put a link in our show notes for it. So just check down there. And what do you look forward to this year with regards to the Dragon Con puppetry track? Because there's a lot that we're looking forward to, but what about you?
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is really just being there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, really just getting back out into the world and going to shows. You know, I don't know exactly what they've got planned this year. That it seems like right now, every time there's a new announcement, it's more exciting than the last announcement because it's just announcement after announcement. And as people who, you know, we're been around the puppetry scene in this area at least for almost almost 10 years, but to see people like Raymond Carr and Stacey Gordon and people like that who are sort of everyone's sort of getting back out there, and there's just going to be this fresh energy getting back out into the world and putting on shows, and I think it's going to be a blast. So I think anyone who's interested in puppetry or really just interested in good storytelling and performing, you know, check out the puppetry track. They've got a lot of great things coming up.
All right, as we close, a question that comes up because we brag about the Late Night Puppetry Slam.
Okay.
Tell us what the slam is and why it's so awesome.
I can't stay awake that late.
Yeah, Veronica's seen about 10 minutes of the slam every year because she falls asleep.
I can't. I try so hard.
Really, for me, the great thing about the Puppetry Slam, it's like this just a celebration of the convention. It's just this sort of big release for everybody of just, you know, watching Batman do something that Batman really ought not to be doing on stage, you know, things like that. It's just, it's like this collective sigh of relief and joy from everybody to be at Dragon Con and to sort of be 3 nights into it and just having a great time together and being up late and being naughty. Like, you know, just it sort of taps into that kid in you who knows that we shouldn't be doing this, but we are, and we're allowed because we're all adults now and we're having a great time.
Yeah, we highly recommend the Puppetry Slam. And thank you, Chuck, as well as Veronica from Felt Nerdy. We'll put a link to your connections as well in our show notes. Just check below. In closing, we're looking forward to Dragon Con. We're looking forward to supporting the puppetry track. What else should we know about the puppetry track?
Yeah, just I would say get there early.
Yes.
Get in line because everyone's going to be there and everyone's going to be excited. And the puppeteers don't make a lot of money. They make money usually by they're usually coming there at their own expense or at, you know, at a loss, you know, but they have merchandise. They have puppetry. You could don't spend $100 buying a puppet on Amazon when you can go to, you know, buy it straight from the puppeteer and support a puppeteer and not a factory in China.
Yes.
That's what I would say.
Great
Nice.
advice.
Yeah, absolutely. We love the puppetry community that's expressed at Dragon Con. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the con.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. We'll see you there. Kapla!
Awesome. That's great.